What's up, Blaise?
Amber, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good, good, just it's pouring rain here in New York, and if it was a little colder, it'd be snow.
Oh,
So yeah. Other than that, nothing too crazy.
have you ever done a live AMA before?
First time, so thank you for the invitation.
Sure. So the breakdown for the audience and for you is that you will answer any questions that come in that I pop up on the screen. So people are welcome as they have their questions to ask you, and I will share them with you. I will start you off with a couple of questions, and I will give you a few time checks within. So my first question for you, I'm going to kick us off with an introduction, and then tell us how you got into sales specifically, because I think you probably have an interesting background.
Sure. So, yeah, Blaise Bevilacqua here, and I've been with UserGems for coming up on 2 years, and I sit in an account executive role here. Um, Kind of like a lot of people, I didn't really have a career to go into sales. After school, I was an English teacher for 2 years in South Korea, and I happened to be tutoring an account executive at the time. And I'm trying to remember where some massive data storage company. I'm trying to remember what it was, but anyway, so pretty much for a year, I understood like what he did, his day to day. I was like, oh, like this actually sounds pretty interesting, and so that's what led me. After my contract was up, I was like, I really want to join a cloud company. That's what I kept referring it to as. I was like, I just want to be in the cloud, and then happened to find an SDR role at a Dutch-based startup, and was there for 2 years. It was acquired by SurveyMonkey, and then was at SurveyMonkey for 2 years. And then Christian, our CEO here, tapped me on the shoulder when they were building out the team. And yeah, so it's coming up on 6 years total of career in SaaS, and yeah, excited to be here. And I wasn't the plan, but like I'm so happy that it's working out this way. If I could go back in time, what advice would I give myself when I first started out as an AE? This is a great question, and I think the number one thing would be understand where people are within their buying journey, or within the customer journey, like within the life cycle. And what I mean by that is I was always very excited that, you know, the best logo just came inbound. Awesome. They're ready to buy. And then that ended up causing a lot of heartache and frustration and a lot of calories burned chasing people when it was just an educational call. Like they were just trying to stay abreast with what's happening in the market and what tools are out there. And I didn't really know the proper questions to gauge where someone was. So I would say really understand and hone in on discovery and where people are within their journey. Isaac, if you had to move to a role outside of sales, what would you choose? So there's two things. Before this, I was like, huh, maybe I'll become an engineer. I try to think logically. I'm more of an emotional based thinker, but I always want to try to think as logical as possible, even though I'm really not like logical at all. So I think it would be great to become an engineer, but I guess now with like GPT and everything, like that's going to be a little bit more difficult. But if it wasn't for engineering, I would say product marketing or RevOps. So there's a lot because I'm pretty interested in a lot of different departments, getting to work so closely with people. So yeah, revenue operations or product marketing, but engineering I think would probably be third. Got any tips for improving the relationship between sales and marketing? Yes, and I think it's constant communication. Before UserGems, I wasn't really sure what marketing did. There was a lot of friction. I was like always like, oh my gosh, these leads are terrible. What do you actually do throughout your day? There was really no understand. I had no understanding, and I think that's because the teams were so siloed. But here at UserGems, there's so much collaboration between, weekly meetings with marketing to focus on target accounts, what the leads are looking like coming in terms of conversion, working with our paid media team to help tweak any ads that are being surfaced on social. So I think the alignment has to come with a lot of internal conversations that are needed to be had to make sure that everyone is achieving and striving for the same goal. So easier said than done, and it takes a lot of time, do things that don't scale, but I would say probably meeting at least 1 hour to 2 hours per week with different marketing departments to give feedback. That's like probably the number one thing that we do here. Justine Wares, how do you make so many of your prospects feel so confident and comfortable with you as a sales rep? That is a very big compliment, Justine. And I think a lot of it comes down to servant, like a servant mindset, in the sense that they're coming to us for a problem, and if you put your best interest first, people could immediately see that, and it's a horrible experience for them. It's a horrible experience for the company. It's just so I think changing the mindset to not try to sell people, but more diagnose problems and be a little bit more consultative um, with them, with what they're trying to achieve, and also just be yourself. I think the biggest thing, even if you work for a large corporation and they want you to have corporate speak, I think being as human and just be yourself as possible. It's okay to fumble. It's okay to not be articulate. It's okay to curse. It shows that you're real. And I think that gives people comfort of working with you. So yeah, I would say just be yourself as much as possible. Caroline Irby, how do you set aside those emotional feelings in sales and hone into your logical side? It's hard because I am pretty emotional, but I think what really helps me to just remain calm, cool, and take a time to reprocess the task at hand, or any new information, whether that's an email or something on the fly. I think this is kind of a side note, but I think really physical exercise is one way to relieve any kind of anxiety. And that's one way that it makes me think more logically, because all of the emotional side of processing gets buried. And then I could actually, focus a little bit more on the problem that needs to be addressed. So I think physical activity is one really helpful way to be more logical as a byproduct of working out. Amber, how do you use multi-threading to accelerate deals? Do you have any best practices? So yes, we there's a cheat code here, and that's we use UserGems. We use the own product, and so essentially one component of this is surfacing the buying committee within our target accounts. So after I have the first demo with, let's say, a VP of sales, what I'll end up doing is there's a multi-threading sequence that we have where essentially I could go into the prospect account and see everyone within the buying committee that I should be talking to as well. And then what I'll do is put them into this multi-threaded post demo sequence. And it's essentially just a step-by-step, very quick overview of, hey, Samantha just met with Amber. We spoke about XYZ. She mentioned, here are her problems. Here's what she's looking to achieve. If you'd like an invite to future calls, happy to loop you in. No response needed. Just make it as soft as possible and tailor it to the individual that you're reaching out to. So again, do things that don't scale in the sense of first personalizing this first step, but we swarm accounts because we use our own product to effectively multi-thread into prospective accounts. So yeah, that's number one for accelerating the deal. Just get as many eyeballs on the conversations as possible.
I'm just popping in to say you're doing great. Doing a really good job.
Thanks, Amber. What are some good ways to remove friction for prospects during the sales process? So sales leaders probably won't like this response, but if you have essentially a sales process in Salesforce where it's like step one, discovery, step two, larger demo, step three, trial. One thing that's one thing that I like to do is kind of remove myself from that process. Like that's a great framework to have, but a lot of this comes back down to the buyer journey and really understanding where that prospect is. And so an example could be always showing pricing just so people know. I'm a huge believer in being transparent with like what the costs are going to be associated. And it's very difficult to do a lot of like everything within a 30-minute call. So if the time does need if you do need to move along, I would tell the prospect, hey, we have like 15 minutes left. Should we talk about pricing now, or should we set up a second call? So it's always being cognizant of the time, where the person is within their journey. And a give to get is also huge. Like, so you'll give up information to get information. And I think once you humanize this process, it sounds very calculated, but the more your champion believes in you, that also removes and reduces a lot of friction. So it's hard. There's not like a silver bullet, and it's different across every organization. Like if you work for a publicly traded company, it's hard to agree on terms and just send it back in order form. But if you work for, a pre-seed company, you could do red lines yourself. So it's case by case. But in terms of like removing friction, I think the best thing to do is being able to know how to navigate through your organization and bring in the domain experts when needed. Long-winded way of asking how to remove friction. Have you noticed any trends in SaaS sales that people should be paying attention to for next year? Yes, and I think the number one thing, this was always top of mind, but I think this is probably more so pertinent now than ever before, and that's to disqualify early. And it's really hard to do because it's an art and a science trying to understand where people are within their journey. But really making sure that you're spending the right time with the right people who will reciprocate. And I think that that's a pretty big trend is people rediscovering how to conduct great discovery. And I think with that, disqualifying out is a big theme that I'm noticing across our team as well. Because I've always been pretty bad. I'm like, oh my gosh, this logo is great. The company is awesome. They'd be a great fit. But I've spent months and trying to chase people that they just weren't ready at the time, and it wasn't a priority, and the timing wasn't there. So yeah, disqualifying out is, I think, a 2023 trend. Sarah Angel, what was the most satisfying opportunity you ever closed, and why? Huh. I would say probably the first, just because you're like, oh my gosh, like that was so much work. That was insane. And the company was called IEEE. It was a like a science and technology publication. They're the largest, like they produce scientific journals, articles, and it was for a website feedback company. And it sounds so funny going back to it, because like here in New York City, the IEEE was located in New Jersey, and go like having to demo in front of all the decision makers, and I'm like dressed up. I look like it just was. It just felt so archaic, but it was just nice to be able to just understand like how much grit, hard work, persistence, everything goes into a deal, and the rest. I thought it would get easier, but it doesn't. So I would say just like the first one is a nice memory to have. Dozier, how do you stay mentally resilient as an AE, especially in times like this? To be honest, it's very hard. Um, but I think one good way, and I'm like a one thing that's helped calm my nerves and give me comfort is just knowing that there's seasons in life. And it sounds super corny, like we're all in different chapters at different stages, but I think collectively as a whole, we're all here. But ways that I just keep my sanity throughout the year and on a day-to-day basis, going back to like physical activity. I think you need in a position like this, you don't it's certainly helpful to either go to the gym and lift weights, do yoga to just like zen out and relax, run long distances. And I know it's difficult for people to be able to prioritize time to do that, but this almost becomes a non-negotiable if you just want to keep your resiliency levels high. Because again, if you can lift weights and you get a really great sweat in, and that just melts any kind of anxiety, external frustrations, like it just melts everything away. And it's been a helpful cheat code for me to just stay physically fit and mentally resilient.
We're a little over halfway through now, and I think all of us are like ready to go to the gym when we get off because of you. So we've got about 13 more minutes left.
Cool. Thanks, Amber. Simon, how do you work with your demand gen marketing team to align messaging? Do you ask your new prospects, how did you hear about us? And what are some interesting trends you see on that front? So, a lot to unpack here. And I think, how do we work with our demand and marketing team to align on messaging? So, the nice thing is, our account development reps, the ADRs, they roll up to marketing, and they have full reign on creativity, whatever it takes to essentially get people interested. And with this, we do have an enablement manager helping with product positioning, how to be able to speak on behalf of what people are looking for. And I think with that consistent training and iteration, that helps position for when our ADRs are reaching out to folks. So that's number one. Do you ask your new prospects, how did you hear about us? Yes. So all the time, that's probably the best way to really get an understanding of where someone came in through the funnel. It's nice that we're tracking a lot of this, but a lot of times things could slip through the cracks, and people hear us through the grapevine. That might be a new channel for us. So always trying to understand where people are coming from. And interesting trends that you see on that front, I would say um, a lot of communities, like internal communities. So whether like a Slack community or a um, like Wizard of Ops, for example, where a lot of operations people, come together, huddle. Um, a lot of times folks will say, hey, could you check out, like, anyone have a product that could help with XYZ? So um, Slack's been helpful, like Revenue Genius as well. Where else? Any other interesting trends? Podcasts are huge. People will, interesting, like just name drop UserGems, and then they'll come in through a podcast, and then also Reddit. So surprisingly, I've been hearing Reddit, like deep in Reddit forums with either SDRs, like how to prospect better, RevOps Reddit forums. That's been an interesting one. So I'm wondering, Isaac, if you're still on here, maybe we should do some targeting in Reddit. So thanks, Simon. Amber, what's a recent win that you're super proud of, either professionally or personally? Um, Personally, I would say I signed up a couple of months ago for an Italian language class just because to be able to speak the language, like where my family's from, I think that's huge. And to be able to get out of the house and just have, you know, just be able to communicate, especially like with my family members is number one, but also just as a way to like challenge myself. I'm always looking for new ways to help my neurons fire on all cylinders. And I think learning a new language is huge. So that's like one thing I've been working on. So very at the infancy stages. So yeah, Italian's been interesting. Amber, challenge. How would you explain UserGems to someone who doesn't know much about B2B SaaS, like someone's grandma at Christmas dinner? This is interesting because a lot of times my grandparents are still alive. They're 96, and I had to do this for Thanksgiving. And so essentially, I'll say I work in tech, and then my grandpa will say, "What does that mean?" I say I work in sales and I sell software. He'll say, "What does that mean?" And I'll say, a lot of times these large software companies, when someone typically the best customers are people that have used your product in the past. And so essentially what UserGems does is just track our customers for job changes to let them know, hey, this could be potentially a good time to buy. And then I'll just stop right there and see if like his brain melted or if there's been any confusion. But yeah, it's essentially that's kind of like the route I take. It's peeling back the layer very slowly. Amber, what's a tool that you use now that you would buy again if you changed companies? Number one, I would say Cabal. And what Cabal is, it essentially ingests our Salesforce data and maps whoever our investors or customers or people that opt in are connected to within that target account or prospect account. And essentially, like you could do this with SalesNav to some degree, but what Cabal does is then operationalize everything. So sending a message to the investor on behalf of your CEO, for instance. So being able to like effectively multi-thread and open up doors or unstick deals. And so if if you're looking for ways to layer in additional multi-threading, Cabal has been awesome. Actually, one more too. Scratchpad has changed my life forever. Probably it's the best tool for sales reps out there in terms of updating pipeline. It's given me years back to my life. I didn't even think about it because it's so ingrained into my workflow that I don't even think about it. But it's essentially, instead of having to update Salesforce manually and just it's pretty clunky, just all with inline edits. Scratchpad has been my lifesaver for coming up on 2 years. So it's my absolutely favorite product, and I would revolt if we got rid of it. Who do you think AE should be following right now on LinkedIn to learn and improve? Kind of biased here, but I would say Kristen Connor has been incredible to, and I'm not just saying this because she works here. Um, I've never met someone who's so strategic and who's so thoughtful in their approach with everything. And she shares daily tips and tricks for usually for like large enterprise deals. So she's great to follow. Brian Lamana over at Gong too. He's an up and coming star, and he's been killing it lately with sharing actionable tips as well. So Brian Lamana, I always look forward to his daily post. That's really good. The boys over at President's Club. So Armand, Farouk, and Nick. I don't know his last name, so if you want to follow, go to President's Club and see who runs that. They're also great. Josh Braun, of course, but yeah, I would say for right now, to keep it simple, Brian Lamana and Kristen Connor are two like really great people to keep tabs on. What are your favorite things to do when you're not working? Nice. So, big fan of the outdoors. I like to skateboard. More of a weekend warrior now with it, which kind of stinks because working takes up most of the day. Skate when there are good waves, go surf. New York is pretty interesting that like there are actually great waves here in Queens as well as like further out in Long Island. So like Montauk gets great. New Jersey as well has really good waves, especially in the winter. So that's really nice. Cooking, reading, running, spending time with my wife, and going to as many museums as possible, and here in the city, as well as chess. So I started playing chess about 5 years ago, and slowly every day just trying to play as much chess as possible. Do you have any book or podcast recommendations? So one, probably everyone has talked about this ad nauseum, but Atomic Habits by James Clear, that's changed my life. And I've read it twice this year because it's really helped me prioritize time and build healthy habits and get rid of unhealthy ones. I'm still working on, I think I have a ton of unhealthy habits. But non like self-help related, I would say Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. And essentially the premise is you end up getting stronger when there are shocks and stressors and distress within a system. So the premise is like things gain from disorder, and you actually, from like a business standpoint, it's super interesting when all things are going swimmingly. That's when people aren't as resilient, systems aren't as resilient. And I think it ties in perfectly to the economy today, because especially if you're a seller, if you could sell in this economy, you're just becoming stronger. You're just getting better. You're learning better discovery. You're learning how to navigate buying committees of 10 plus people these days. So come when like back when we're in a bull market and things are like cranking away, you're actually gonna see your results 10x. That's embellishing, but I would highly recommend Anti-Fragile from Nassim Taleb. So yeah, big fan of that book.
Cool. Those were great recommendations, and I think that last one sounds a lot like we've been talking a lot about how pressure creates diamonds, right? It's like you kind of need that pressure. That's like the obvious one, right? So you need the pressure to grow stronger, essentially.
That's a way more succinct way of describing the book than how I just, rambled on for 5 minutes. But yeah.
That's okay. This has been great. There was some internal discussion on our Slack about what is behind you on the wall. So I don't know if you want to answer that here or in Slack, but
Sure. That's a yak bell from Nepal.
oh,
I went there in 2017 for a month in the Everest region, and all of these yaks, like everything's transported by yak, and you just hear the bells going off like wherever you are. There's no roads, everything. It's probably the most wild place you can go. And it's yeah, I bought a yak bell and brought it home. So that's
cool. Mystery solved. We were
yeah,
very
it's
curious.
probably super weird. Like, what the hell is that thing?
There were some questions. Okay, awesome. I mean, this was great. Do you want to let the people know where they can find you?
Sure. So yeah, Blaise Bevilacqua on LinkedIn, Blaise at usergems.com if you have any questions. And I'm always open to talking with other revenue leaders, just like, hey, what's going on? What's working? What's life like for you? So it doesn't even need to be like work related. If you just want to catch up, feel free to ping me. I try to meet with everyone that says, hey, what's going on? So yeah, you can find me there.
Yeah, cool. I guess last question is any weekend plans?
Weekend plans. So I just got a new couch, which is the most exciting. It's like super boring. So I think going to find um, blankets and pillows that match it. And that sounds so freaking boring. So I would say,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of like chores around the house. That's
Yeah.
yeah, and just
Oh, no.
recharge the batteries.
Sweet. That sounds nice. Well, thank you for joining us. Everyone, I'm going to drop Blaise's information in the comments. If you want to go and follow him, go ahead and do it. And follow UserGems for more AMAs. And have a great weekend.
Cool. Thanks, Amber.
Bye.
All right. Bye.